think that crypto lending space is something that not everyone is aware of, but that's something that that definitely should be talked more about.
Lending in the DeFi space is really something that, you know, in my opinion, can make generally also the access to these tools much more, let's say, feasible again, right? So it's again kind of that aspect of accessibility, as well as obviously the transparency aspect that is always the case when we speak about blockchain, unless they're private blockchains, but even then they could be transparent. So basically, you know, lending here in the DeFi space, you know, obviously people always, let's say, you know, kind of think, DeFi lending is magic or such a mysterious thing, right? But at the end of the day, it's still lending, right? It's just that you do not lend from a centralized entity or authority. You lend from a, let's say, decentralized protocol of you know, where people, let's say, or the players, nodes, so to say. Obviously, it's not a node in that sense of a blockchain node, but you could still kind of compare it to a node which provides resources, right? Person A provides resources in the form of liquidity to this protocol, and then it's kind of always a circle, right? And then also the aspect that is here, or that needs to be considered, is also that the interest rates for the lending are not decided by a central bank or by any centralized player. Again, it's also again decided upon either an algorithm or, you know, a membership based vote, right? So that the lending protocols community votes, okay, what is the interest rate of the week, so to say, right? There is protocols such as MakerDAO that do this on a regular basis, where they hold these community votes to vote on these respective aspects. Also, you know, what we need to consider here is that usually, as let's say, as DeFi is right now, it can change in the next 6 to 12 months when regulation is picking up steam. Though as DeFi is right now, right, there is no need for KYC at all, typically. I mean, there is a trend right now coming of institutional DeFi, which would change this to a certain extent, but generally, there is no such thing as KYC or anything. It's very accessible for everyone. Though this poses obviously also, let's say, challenges, right? So usually when we speak about how do you lend something, right, usually you have to provide collateral, and usually this collateral, you're under collateralized in the real world, right? This is a typical thing because the respective party that you borrow from knows you, right? They know who you are, they know where your house is, and things like this, which on the one hand allows you to have more access potentially to liquidity, that you otherwise wouldn't have, because you just don't own enough assets, so to say, for it. But on the other hand, it also poses a lot of risks, right? We know about these different financial crises, especially also in around 2008 and such, where these under-collateralized loans brought a lot of problems. So in the DeFi space, loans are always over-collateralized, right? So that's one of the core aspects, which kind of, you know, on the one hand, obviously, you cannot get these crazy loans like at times used to be in the real world. But this, on the other hand, also is a kind of a protection mechanism for everyone involved, right? Because obviously you always need to be able to pay back your loan, and you can never borrow more than you actually have already, right? And this kind of is a more, let's say, secure way of maintaining an ecosystem, which then prevents you maybe from having to print a lot of money, right, to maintain like an economy and have it, so to say, sustainably continue. So that's one of the core principles in lending that I think need to be singled out. But other than this, you know, it is not so much of a magic. Again, here it has to go back to that the UI UX of these protocols is not always as intuitive, and hence a bit difficult to understand at times for, you know, the let's say the average person that is not so much familiar with financial products or tech in general, right? But on the other hand, kind of it's much more dynamic and accessible, right? And in the future, I do expect, for instance, when going back to NFTs, that, for instance, let's say you have a KYC NFT in your wallet, and then maybe you can actually have a bit of different conditions than the over collateralized structure, just because that KYC NFT validates that you own, apart from this, a property, which in the worst case could be, let's say, collected or whatever it may be, right? And allows a bit more of, let's say, like, under collateralized loans. Though obviously personally I would say let's be careful with these type of loans in general, but just to give some perspective as to where the industry may be heading. And generally also from an interest rate perspective, I think that's one of the core features. And also NFTs, I mean, you mentioned it, the lands, right, in the metaverse, for instance. I mean, also this, whether it is a land in the metaverse, which is basically virtual real estate, or actual real estate in the real world, whether in the form of an NFT or in the form of fungible tokens with, for instance, the ERC20 standard, could also be used as collateral. So it doesn't have to just be cash, so let's say in the form of fiat or Bitcoin or ETH that is used as collateral. It could also be, an NFT that has a certain value in the form of representing virtual land, which is also scarce in the metaverse, or other aspects, right? So there's a lot of, the lending ecosystem is very big, but it's also, I would say personally right now, very saturated, right? There are a lot of lending protocols, and, there are a lot of these big names in the DeFi space, which, let's say going back 1 or 2 years, they all sounded, a lot different, but the kind of trend in the industry that I see right now is that all these bigger players in the DeFi space, I'm not going to mention any right now, but those that know about it, they probably know which ones I'm speaking about. Otherwise go check out, for instance, DeFi Pulse, which always has some great resources about DeFi in general. All these different projects, they are kind of becoming a bit similar to each other. So I do think that DeFi lending is a hot topic, but it will kind of narrow down to where is the community really utilizing it, and how much is the community going to be involved and actually can make decisions that are not based on centralized players, but actually on decentralized communities, governing the conditions. And this then in turn also allows people that usually wouldn't have access to, let's say, borrowing money to start their businesses, or finance crucial aspects in their everyday lives, right, or emergencies, to have actually access to lending, especially in the regions where the unbanked population is quite large, right? And usually financial institutions do not offer any type of lending services. So this is really where I think DeFi lending, also on that kind of micro level, will definitely, kind of come to fruition and have a huge impact in the future.
Yeah.